So I had a chance to play a few hours of Throne of Liberty during its open beta this past week, and I wanted to create this video as part of an always casual MMO series that will just take a look at different MMOs and my experience playing them as first impressions as a casual player. And so only having a couple of hours a day, in this case I only had a couple hours total to be able to play through. I think I got to like level 10 on Throne of Liberty, so not far at all, but at least enough to, I think, get an idea on if this is something that I'd want to continue and play through when it hits release. And so for this video, what I want to cover for Throne of Liberty is over three main categories. Keep it very short. Those categories are going to be over the visuals, the gameplay, and the story. So who am I? I'm Neville8, and this video is going to be part of my Always Casual MMO, where I'm going to take a look as a casual player and the first impressions experience for different MMOs that are coming out. So let's get into it. So for the first area that I want to cover for Throne of Liberty is going to be over the visuals. So I'm going to do a quick pros and cons list, and then we'll move on to the next one. So for pros for the visuals, the world is beautiful to me. I really enjoy like this kind of colonial-esque aesthetic. Reminds me a lot of New World. One really cool thing that I found as well was just the cool shape-shifting into a rock giant by Dumore as I was leaving that village. That was really sick.
I see. Wait a second.
Whoa, what? Dude. What's going on? Okay. Sick. I found that like a really cool use of just showing kind of the possibilities and what you're going to expect, and seeing that me turning into a wolf is not just a me thing, but it is something that is, you know, having that kind of spirit animal or that spirit creature as part of just the world itself. The UI itself, I also find that's not necessarily as intrusive as other games, at least in the UI, as like the HUD of when you're just moving around and using your abilities, and how much, I would say, like sensory feedback I have when I'm just playing the game, not necessarily going through the menus. Now that leads me to a con. I think the moment you open your menu, it's pretty hectic and there's a lot there. I think they didn't really do a good job, and I'll go more into this in the gameplay, of being able to introduce the systems kind of one by one and easing you into it. It was a lot to see at first, and I got very, very confused and lost, right? As someone who's casual, who's not used to interacting with these systems, I did find that a bit kind of overwhelming for me. So the last con that I want to bring up for the visuals is that although the world to me is beautiful and that they did a really good job to be visually pleasing, I don't think it really has like that standout style that differentiates it from every other Unreal 5 high fantasy RPG, or even in the case if you were to swap out some clothes, Unreal 5 more that realistic type of graphics. Realistic in the sense of if I'm comparing Throne of Liberty to the art style and direction of like World of Warcraft or like League of Legends, right? Those are more like hyper stylized in that regard. So I think that's something that will make it very difficult to have it stand out versus other games, and maybe that's something that they can think about. I really enjoy like the shape shifting aspects, even though I do wish, like gameplay wise, and I'll go more into this in gameplay, the fox character, the spirit animal that you kind of turn into and run around as, having Dumore be able to shapeshift into that rock giant was really cool. I think if they were to incorporate more of that, at least have it more prominent in the game, that might help it kind of stand out, right? And that's something that I think is just not done as well, and it makes it difficult to not just be another generic high fidelity, high graphic RPG at the moment. Now let's move on to the second section is going to be gameplay that I want to cover. So again, the pros of gameplay. I do enjoy the verticality and the movement within the world. So using the piton, for example, in the flight mode, you know, you can kind of, in my mind, as I'm playing through the game, I can like think of, and I'm looking for more of those mountains you can climb, right? Given that the devs have the ability to be able to allow you to climb, given that if they implement the anchor points to allow you to use the piton to get up there and then kind of and experience the world not only at that kind of like ground level. One other aspect of gameplay that I really enjoy is that the mixing of combat and play styles is super fun to me. So my favorite D&D class, for example, Dungeons and Dragons class, is an Eldritch Knight. I really love to be able to wield around a sword and just do cool magic shit. So I did find that that was pretty fun, and it made the combat a lot better for me when I had my sword. I was swinging around and throwing a liberty, and then I also threw on like a fireball and I think it was like a fire nova attack type of deal, or like a fire blast. Oops, sorry. That made it fun to kind of rotate those abilities and really make the play style my own, and I can kind of play how I want, right? I'm not min-maxing here. I'm just a casual trying to have a good time and play the way that I want to play. And I do feel like that the combat, I could see that they're beginning to allow you to do that, even from an early stage. Now that moves into the cons of the gameplay, right? So speaking of the combat, overall, I would say besides that mixing of play styles and being able to use like magic abilities while wielding a sword and being able to kind of choose what my combat experience is like, I think the combat itself, there are a few issues that make it very difficult to be engaged in. The number one issue that I found is targeting. It's not intuitive to me at all. Why is my crosshair highlighted on a target when I can tab to something else and it doesn't reflect that? So that was really weird to me, and it took me a while, and I don't think I ever really got used to it. Like why am I targeting one and then I have technically am targeted on a different one? I press charge and then it goes to the one that I am not, that my crosshair is not fixated on. Like I really dislike that. Like have some type of like lock on mechanism. If you're tabbed on and you're moving around, you know, like in my mind, that might work better in the kind of like Elden Ring type of lock on system, especially if you're trying to go with action combat style of crosshair. Another thing, and that just kind of goes into the play of mixing of action RPG styles and the tab targeting, I just don't think works very well. I think that you go with, you know, I would say you have the option of, you press V, for example, to switch between the action style and, you know, the traditional style. Choose one and optimize for it, right? I think that would be a better play. Don't kind of like go in the middle road between both. It's not going to work. I think they should choose one or the other and then focus on that one and make it feel a lot better. Leading into feeling better, I think the melee attacks itself, and I think I struggled in the beginning when I was just using my sword. It just doesn't feel very impactful or responsive with the melee attacks. I don't know, the animation, the sound, and the impact hit, something is just off to me. It doesn't feel, when I press a button, when I press on a button or an attack, it just seems like the animation along with the sound and impact, and it just doesn't feel very like built together to make it feel like I did damage with this button. That's bothersome, right? I think like, especially with tab targeting, that needs to feel very good, right? And I think compared to WoW and even WoW Classic, like it's not there at all to me. Like I don't think that is at all on the level that it should be. And I think that if you're going to go with the tab targeting route, you got to make it at least as responsive and as impactful as World of Warcraft has. Also from the combat, too many abilities in the beginning to me. I think you should kind of leading again on WoW. One thing that really gave me a sense of progression, I was moving on, was being able to earn my abilities and also understand them one by one, and building out my portfolio of abilities and using them and understanding the interplays between each ability, right? You don't want to just throw on abilities just for the sake of it to fill up an action bar. Each one should kind of have its purpose, and each one should have a reason why you use it or a reason why you use a different ability. And when you just throw all the abilities on at once, I don't think you have as much time to develop that I would say like the intuition with the abilities that you have and the knowledge for each of the abilities that you gain to be able to understand them until later. And I think that's something as part of progression you can make it makes it seem like that you're progressing, your character is getting stronger, you're gaining more abilities, you're doing more damage. When you just throw everything at the beginning, it's to me it hurts that progression loop. It hurts the ability to better understand which ones you want to use when, and kind of the utility aspects behind each ability that you have. Also with this, the gameplay itself and overall, I think there's just lots and lots of systems that are introduced into the game. I press F10 and I'm kind of like overload, right? And I don't think that, at least in the first kind of couple hours, they do not explain well all of the systems that are there, and at least like hide it if it's not relevant until you learn or have gone through a tutorial for it. I think that's a better way to introduce, and that way you're only seeing kind of what you know, and then as you move on and you gain, let's say, to a certain point where they introduce that system, reveal it, and then have the character or have the player kind of walk through and understand what it's for. I think that makes it a little bit easier to grasp and not just be completely like overwhelmed of information. Now, the last section that I want to cover here is going to be story and just the pros and cons. Unfortunately, I had more cons than pros in this one. I think the pro for the story is that I do like that, you know, a lot of it was voice acted, and I did think that they did a pretty good job. Like, they were able to convey to me the emotions of what the script was saying. You know, you had that one in the beginning, what's his name, with the hurt arm, makes the fun pun.
I'd go myself, but for my arm. But give me a hand.
I thought it was delivered well. All right, it's fun. You know, can you give me a helping hand? His hand's like broken. I think that was really nice that they did. I think that the voice actors did a good job. Overall, for the story, I didn't find it that exciting. You know, it's a pretty generic hero's journey story. At least that's what I gathered from. It's not necessarily a bad thing to just have, you know, a hero's journey, but it just had a lack of connection with the other characters and NPCs that you're introduced to, right? So, like, who the hell is Lottie? Why does it seem like when I'm introduced to her that it's my long lost childhood best friend that we grew up together, and I'm like, I have no idea who you are. Like, why are you here? Right? I have to give you this map. Okay, cool. And then you know, you talk to me like, oh my God, I haven't seen you in 10 years or, you know, 30 years. Like, what are you doing here? And it just makes it seem like, do I even know you? You know, like Thanos in a case. It just didn't vibe with me very well that these characters seem so invested in me and in my character, and I have no idea who they are, right? And I think that takes a lot away from a story when these kind of, I would say, supporting cast just are like, you don't really have a connection to them. That's going to hurt the story.
What happened? Do you have any idea how worried I was? I thought something happened to you.
I have no idea who you are. And so one of the last cons that I have with the story in general is I feel like, at least through the beginning, the couple hours I played, is that I'm being pushed through the story and not necessarily allowing me to choose my own adventure. A few main story quest lines, you know, that you have in Final Fantasy XIV, that there is kind of like a very structured way of how you perceive that story. You know, classic WoW, I think, did this really well. You know, I think the kind of the king in the castle, or the, you know, king of the hill of this is going to be RuneScape, where you can kind of choose which quests you want to do and stories to understand and unearth about the world around you, right? And you can choose what paths you want to take and understand certain areas more than others, right? In classic WoW, from past the starting zone, right, you can start to, if I want to go off into another zone, I can go from Elwyn Forest and head to Duskwood if I want to. Not to Duskwood, Darkshore, for example. Sorry, and even though it is a journey to get there, right? You can kind of make of your level progression as you want. You can choose different areas that impacts, I would say, a bit on, you know, you get more reputation in certain areas, which can impact different, you know, different types of your gameplay in a sense, right? So that's one thing I do enjoy, and I like having the agency to decide my own path. So far with Throne of Liberty, it's not quite like that, right? It feels a little bit more theme parky, but at least that's kind of the pros and cons of the story. So that covers the main 3 areas that I wanted to cover, from, you know, visuals to gameplay to story. You know, visually, I think it's a beautiful game. I just wish that they had a bit more style and unique design to make it really stand out from other, you know, high fidelity generic Unreal 5 games that are coming out currently. Gameplay wise, I think that there is a foundation, and I think one big drawback they've had is just trying to play a balance between this action combat, at least like cursor style, or like that, those crosshairs plus tab targeting. I feel like just choose one and do it 100%, right? You're trying to do, to me, 2 different things, and you're doing both of them mediocre rather than focusing all your intention and making one of them really good. That might just be from, I think, from what I had read before too, and is that there were kind of a lot of combat overhauls where it's just maybe old systems built on top of each other, so you had a lot of tech debt from that made it difficult to kind of roll out more of a fresh system. I'm not sure kind of what happened back in the during the development of the game for that aspect. And, you know, story wise, I just feel like there's not really that much connection to the characters. They seem like all of them, it felt like a lot of characters I talked to, I was their most important person in the world, and how, you know, Lottie couldn't understand. I was so worried that I had almost died, and I'm like, I have no idea who you are. Like, why are you so invested in me, right? And I think, at least with the story wise, I want to be able to have that connection with those supporting cast, and to understand why I'm a part of this world and why these people should be important to me and why I should care about them. So yeah, that covers the 3 areas. Overall, I think I think there's potential. I'm not sure if, you know, it's going to be the best MMO that's out on the market right now, for sure. Like, I think, honestly, I find, if I'm comparing like the closest type of game that is to it, is like New World to me, at least with like visually and just that type of direction. I probably would prefer New World. And, you know, I just think that the combat really does leave me with a lot that is lacking. And if I really wanted to invest a lot of time into this, you know, and just being a casual player, you know, that combat's got to be good for me personally. And if the combat's not as good, you know, the story can really pull you along. You know, with the story lacking a bit, with the combat and gameplay not as exciting, yeah, that's just kind of my first impressions with this game. So all right, so let me know what you think in the comments below, and please smash that like button if you enjoyed this video. And yeah, until next time, this is Never Late, and it's never late to game. Peace out.